A shadow swallowed the city as the Zyrex fleet blotted out the sky. Monstrous vessels, sleek and jagged like predatory birds, loomed above the ruins of human civilization. The air thrummed with the mechanical purr of war engines, a vibration that rattled through the steel skeletons of shattered skyscrapers. Earth was theirs now. Or so they believed. Commander Zyroth stood at the bridge of his flagship, arms folded behind his back, his slit-pupiled eyes scanning the holographic display of the city below. A conquered world should have felt like a victory, but there was a sour taste to this one. Earth had fallen faster than expected, and that troubled him. Humans were supposed to be primitive, easy to break. Yet something about their final stand gnawed at the edges of his mind. They had not begged for mercy. They had fought as if defeat were a mere inconvenience, something to be delayed rather than feared. A Zyrex officer approached, his exoskeletal armor clinking softly. Supreme Commander, the last organized human resistance has been eliminated. We are sweeping for survivors. Zyroth's mandibles twitched in dissatisfaction. Any insurgents? A few scattered pockets. Nothing significant. The commander exhaled slowly, tapping his claws against the smooth metal of the console. Then why do I feel like we have not yet won? Far below, nestled within the crumbling husk of an old banking tower, Sergeant Helena Graves steadied her breath. She had heard the reports. The resistance was gone. The war was over. Yet here she was, rifle nestled against her shoulder, fingers curled over the trigger. The Zyrex had taken everything from her, her squad, her city, her world, but she wasn't done fighting. She watched through her scope as a patrol of Zyrex soldiers moved cautiously through the streets below. They had the look of victors, relaxed, assured, oblivious to the crosshairs sweeping over them. They believed their war was won. That was their first mistake. Helena's pulse was steady as she exhaled. One shot, one breath. The scope settled over the lead soldier, a hulking brute with chitinous plates covering his broad chest. She pressed the trigger. The rifle's suppressor hissed. The Zyrex's head snapped back in a wet explosion of dark ichor. Chaos erupted. The remaining soldiers shouted in their guttural language, their sleek rifles swiveling wildly as they searched for the unseen attacker. Helena was already moving, shifting her position, blending into the debris. She counted 3 more Zyrex, panicked, exposed, easy prey. Another shot. A second soldier crumpled. The last 2 turned and ran. Smart. But not fast enough. A third fell before they reached cover. The last one made it, slamming against the rusted husk of an overturned vehicle. His mandibles clicked furiously as he shouted into his communicator. Helena watched him, waiting. The moment he peeked out, she sent a round straight through his throat. He collapsed, gurgling. Then, silence. She slithered back into the shadows, reloading. This was how it had to be. Not battles, not armies. Just her, picking them off one by one. On the Zyrex command ship, Zyroth stared at the feed from the ground team's helmet cams, now broadcasting nothing but static. A deep, simmering fury curled through his gut. Who did this? The officer swallowed hard. We believe it to be a human sniper, Supreme Commander. Zyroth turned, his dark eyes narrowing. A lone human? The reports from our ground forces indicate. I did not ask for reports, Zyroth snarled. I asked if you truly mean to tell me that a single human is responsible for this. Silence. Zyroth's mandibles flared. Deploy the hunters. Helena had barely settled into a new position when she saw movement below. The Zyrex had responded faster than expected. A new squad moved in, but this one was different. They were smaller, sleeker, hunters, not soldiers. Their armor was darker, their movements disciplined. They fanned out, using the debris for cover, their sensor arrays scanning every crevice. She felt the first flicker of unease. These weren't panicked grunts. They were killers, and they were hunting her. She stayed still, controlling her breathing. They would be looking for the shot's angle, trying to triangulate her position. Fine. Let them guess. Minutes stretched, a silent battle of patience. Then, a mistake. One of the hunters moved just a fraction too soon, exposing a sliver of his skull. Helena didn't hesitate. The shot hit home. The others reacted instantly, ducking low, but she had already relocated. A volley of plasma fire erupted where she had been moments ago, scorching the ruined concrete. They were fast. But not fast enough. She circled, silent as death, angling for her next shot. One of them was using a drone, a sleek, insect-like machine scanning the rooftops. That was a problem. She adjusted her aim and fired. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks. The hunters realized what had happened a second too late. Another shot, another down. 2 left. They knew where she was now. A plasma bolt hissed past her, the heat searing her cheek. She ducked, rolling into cover. They were closing in. She reached for her sidearm. The rifle was useless this close. Her heartbeat remained steady. She had trained for this. A shadow moved. She fired. The last hunter fell, his weapon clattering against the pavement. She exhaled slowly, lowering her gun. Then, a sound. A deep, guttural voice crackled through her stolen communicator. "You are not like the others." Helena stiffened. "I expected cowards. Instead, I find something else." She didn't respond. "I know you can hear me, human." The voice was calm, amused. "You are alone. You fight well, but it will not matter." Helena ground her teeth, adjusting her grip on the rifle. "You cannot win." She severed the connection and melted back into the ruins. Zyroth leaned back in his command chair, mandibles clicking in thought. Interesting. This war was not over after all. The ruins of the city had become a battlefield of silence. The Zyrex no longer moved in easy, confident strides. They stalked. Their heads swiveled with calculated precision, their sensor arrays humming softly as they scanned every crumbling shadow. The hunt had begun. Helena watched them from the shattered remains of an apartment complex, her rifle nestled against her shoulder, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. She could feel the shift in their movements. These were not the same undisciplined foot soldiers she had ambushed before. These were hunters, specialists, the best the Zyrex had to offer. Zyroth had learned his lesson. He wasn't sending prey anymore. He was sending predators. Fine. Let them come. She had spent years training for battlefields just like this, environments where the enemy was superior in numbers, technology, and firepower. But technology didn't make you untouchable. Numbers meant nothing if they couldn't find you. And firepower was only useful if you knew where to aim it. The squad below moved in a loose formation, sweeping the street with disciplined efficiency. They were careful, methodical, adapting to her tactics. One of them, a lithe Zyrex with a jagged crest running down its skull, paused and looked straight at the window where she had positioned herself hours before. Smart. They were tracking the pattern of her attacks, mapping out her previous sniper nests. That meant she needed to stay ahead of them. Helena exhaled, slow and steady, then adjusted her position. She needed to guide them, make them believe they had the advantage. She raised her rifle and deliberately let the crosshairs hover over one of the soldiers, long enough for its armor's proximity sensors to ping a warning. Then she shifted her aim just slightly and squeezed the trigger. The round hit the wall inches from the Zyrex's head, sending a spray of dust and debris into the air. It wasn't a kill shot. It was an invitation. The squad immediately took cover, barking out orders in their guttural language. She could hear them coordinating, their leader snapping commands to triangulate her position. She was already moving. Sliding through the broken remains of the building, she navigated a maze of collapsed walls and shattered furniture, boots soundless against the debris. The trick wasn't just knowing where to shoot. It was knowing where the enemy would go next. She had learned that lesson long ago. Her earpiece crackled. A voice, deep and laced with amusement, slipped through the static. "You think yourself untouchable." Helena tensed but didn't stop moving. "Zyroth. I admire your skill, human," he continued, his voice measured, unhurried. "It is a shame it is wasted on a lost cause." She remained silent, pressing her back against a collapsed doorway. "There is nowhere left for you to run," he said. "You are alone. You must know this." Helena reached into her vest and pulled out a small transmitter, quickly switching frequencies. The Zyrex had managed to break into her stolen comms. That meant they were listening. That meant they were learning. She couldn't allow that. The line went dead as she severed the connection. She dropped lower, crawling through a narrow gap between fallen support beams, then emerged onto the remnants of an old highway overpass. The squad had moved deeper into the ruins, searching, believing they were closing in. She needed to reinforce that belief. Raising her rifle again, she took another shot, deliberately sloppy, a round that clipped the edge of a burned-out vehicle near one of the Zyrex's positions. It forced them to react, to believe she was getting desperate, making mistakes. The Zyrex leader barked another order, and she saw them fan out, moving toward what they assumed was her location. They were doing exactly what she needed them to do. She turned and slipped away, heading toward the real battleground. She had chosen the location hours ago, a collapsed subway entrance, buried under twisted steel and broken concrete. A perfect funnel. There was only one way in, and once they committed, there would be no way out. She positioned herself in the wreckage of an old transport tunnel, rifle resting steady against a rusted beam. She listened to the Zyrex approach, their movements careful but determined. They believed they were tracking a wounded enemy. They didn't know they were walking into a sniper's trap. The first one entered the kill zone. She took the shot. The Zyrex collapsed before it could even react, its armored body hitting the ground in a heap of exoskeletal plating. The second was faster, diving for cover, but she had already anticipated that. She adjusted and fired again. The second soldier fell, its rifle clattering onto the concrete. The last two hesitated, and that was all she needed. She shifted positions, took aim, and finished the fight. Silence. She remained still, breathing shallow, waiting for any sign of movement. Nothing. Then, a slow clap echoed through her stolen earpiece. Well played. Her jaw tightened. "You are more than I expected," Zyroth admitted. "A predator, not just prey." She didn't respond. "There are few in this galaxy who could have done what you just did," he mused. Fewer still who would have had the patience to wait. She could feel the shift in his tone, the quiet amusement giving way to something else. "You will not get another opportunity." Then the transmission cut out. Helena exhaled, lowering her rifle. The hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun. The wind carried the scent of burning metal through the ruins. Smoke curled between the skeletal remains of buildings, twisting in eerie silence. Helena adjusted her scope, scanning the shattered streets below. Every muscle in her body was coiled, her breath steady, controlled. The hunt was no longer a game of patience. It was a countdown. Zyroth was coming. She had felt it the moment his voice slipped through her stolen comms. There had been no bluster, no hollow threats. He was not like the others. He had studied her, adapted. He had lost his hunters, and instead of retreating, he had become one himself. That made him dangerous. And it meant she had only one shot. She exhaled, repositioning herself within the wreckage of an old office building. The structure leaned against the ruin beside it, its supports twisted from a long-ago explosion. It was unstable, but that was the point. If things went wrong, she would bring the entire thing down. She wasn't leaving this fight alive unless Zyroth fell first. A flicker of movement. She adjusted her sights, focusing on the distant outline of a Zyrex soldier moving cautiously through the debris. Not Zyroth. Another hunter. A distraction. She didn't take the shot. They wanted her to reveal herself, to force her hand. Instead, she let the hunter move, tracking its path without engaging. It scanned its surroundings, mandibles twitching as it relayed information back to the fleet. If she had taken the bait, the others would have triangulated her position within seconds. Clever. She shifted her aim, scanning for the real threat. The streets were too quiet now. The Zyrex weren't searching anymore. They were waiting. Then, she saw him. Zyroth moved differently than the others. He was deliberate, unhurried, as if the battlefield itself bent to his pace. His armor was darker, the plates thicker, reinforced. But it was his posture that made her hesitate. He wasn't searching. He was looking directly at her. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Zyroth tilted his head slightly, as if daring her to fire. She exhaled, adjusting her shot. One shot. One chance. Then he moved. Faster than she had anticipated, he twisted away, a blur of motion. Her bullet struck the space where he had stood a heartbeat before, chipping a fragment of stone. Helena didn't curse, didn't flinch. She had known it wouldn't be that easy. She rolled away from her perch just as a plasma bolt seared through the space she had occupied. The structure groaned under the impact, sending dust cascading around her. He had fired without hesitation, without confirming a hit. He knew she wouldn't stay still. She sprinted through the wreckage, weaving between collapsed walls and rusted beams. She needed another angle. Another shot. Zyroth was already moving, cutting off escape routes, driving her toward an inevitable conclusion. She could hear his footsteps, calculated, measured. He wasn't wasting energy. He was tracking her like a predator stalking wounded prey. She reached the edge of the building and vaulted over the broken ledge, landing silently on a lower floor. Her rifle came up, scanning the darkness. No movement. Then, the faintest shift of air. She twisted, firing instinctively. The bullet struck something solid, but not flesh. Zyroth had anticipated her reaction, raising his armored forearm to absorb the shot. A split second. That was all she had. She dropped low as he lunged, his blade slicing through the air where her throat had been. The weapon hummed with energy, crackling against the stone as it missed. She rolled, pulling her sidearm. A shot fired. Zyroth twisted, the bullet grazing his shoulder. He didn't slow. A fist slammed into her side, the force sending her skidding across the floor. Pain exploded through her ribs, but she forced herself to move, scrambling into cover. Zyroth's voice followed, calm, steady. "You are faster than I expected." Helena steadied her breathing. "You're slower than I hoped." A low, amused chitter. "Your kind fascinates me." She remained silent, adjusting her grip on the pistol. She only had one magazine left. Her rifle was across the room, out of reach. This was close quarters now. Zyroth moved through the darkness, his presence a shadow among shadows. "You fight like a species that refuses to die." Helena slid a knife from her vest. "That's because we do." A blur of motion. She ducked, slashing upward as Zyroth struck. Her blade caught the edge of his armor, barely cutting through. His counter was swift, an elbow driving toward her ribs. She twisted away, but the impact still clipped her, sending her staggering. She fired her pistol. 2 shots. One missed. The other struck true. Zyroth's body jerked slightly, but he did not fall. His armor had absorbed most of the impact. Helena's jaw tightened. Zyroth exhaled, his mandibles clicking in quiet approval. "You will not surrender." She didn't answer. He took a step closer. "You know you cannot win." Helena adjusted her stance. "Then I guess I'll just have to lose better than you." Zyroth's mandibles flared, his dark eyes narrowing. "So be it." He lunged. She met him head-on. The world blurred in a haze of pain. Helena hit the ground hard, her breath forced from her lungs in a ragged gasp. Blood dripped from her temple, warm and sticky, but she forced herself up, hands pressing against the cold stone beneath her. Zyroth loomed above, his silhouette framed by the flickering light of the burning city. His blade hummed softly, vibrating with restrained energy. She had given everything to this fight. Every ounce of strength, every calculated move. And yet, Zyroth was still standing. Helena exhaled, steadying herself despite the sharp pain in her ribs. She could feel a fracture, maybe worse, but none of it mattered. Pain was secondary. She wasn't dead yet. Zyroth tilted his head, studying her with something bordering on curiosity. "You are still breathing." She wiped blood from the corner of her mouth, forcing a smirk. Disappointed. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he deactivated his blade with a sharp click, retracting it into the gauntlet on his forearm. No. I am impressed. Helena remained tense. He wasn't a fool. This wasn't mercy. This was something else. Zyroth took a slow step forward, his eyes scanning her with analytical precision. Your kind does not submit. Even in the face of inevitable defeat, you fight. She shifted her weight subtly, feeling the knife still strapped to her ankle. One last weapon. One last chance. Zyroth's mandibles twitched in something resembling amusement. Tell me, human, do you believe this war is over? Her fingers tightened around the hilt of the knife. Not even close. A deep, rumbling sound echoed from his chest. Laughter. Good. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Helena remained still, her mind racing. This wasn't victory. This wasn't surrender. This was a message. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.